So, David Bannock's political editor of The Independent, and my colleague, Kate Devlin, writable editor, in the Independent's salubrious lobby room in Parliament. Also
Nothing if not
a
luxurious.
library, as you could see, from the many books behind us. After a very tense and quite fiery PMQs today, and let's start off with the big story that really dominated it under the whole exchanges, the dreadful murder of 18-year-old Henry Nowak, but really the political repercussions of that. Now, it was clear to me that both the Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the leader of the opposition, Kenny Badenoch, were trying to calm things down, trying to be measured, trying to be reasonable. But I'm not sure that reason was going to work today, unfortunately. And I think maybe Nigel Farage was playing to a much wider audience when he got up and made really quite inflammatory remarks about the two-tier justice system and, you know, the fact that racism, or the claim rather that measures to tackle racism in the police and other public sector organisations has led to this situation where whites are treated differently to non-whites. They say bad cases make bad laws, but any of us who've watched that footage, and I have to say, as a father of a son who's a student, I shared what the Prime Minister had to say talking about his teenage son and his reaction to that footage, Henry Nowak from the police camera, the way they treated him as he bled to death in front of them, and cuffed him and really dismissed him until it was too late. It sent shudders down your spine. But as I say, this is now played into a much wider political situation.
Yeah, and I think what happened at Prime Minister's questions was probably what you saw was politicians appealing to two different sets of audiences. And the people who were listening when the Prime Minister said that they, to listen to calls not for this to lead to violence is potentially a different set of audience than the one that Nigel Farage is appealing to. And I thought it was very strong from the Prime Minister when he accused Farage of pretending, of ignoring what the family want. And of course the family have called out and caused for this not to lead to division. But I'm not sure it's the same people who are listening when when Keir Starmer says something as when Nigel Farage says something. And my heart goes out to the family because we saw this a lot during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, that families would come out after terrible things had happened, and they would call for, the phrase at the time was no retaliation. Effectively what you saw was an awful lot of bereaved people kind of forced to come out. I just mean that in terms of timing, at a time when they would rather be with their families, appealing for no one to go through what their family had gone through. And it was the worst thing when it was ignored.
The problem in all these cases, and we see it time and again, is that reason and reasonable words are the right thing, but the hardest ones to mend. And it's a great pity that the families call for the murder of their son not to be used to fuel division. It is falling on deaf ears in many places. But I couldn't help but feel Farage wanted the catcalls, wanted the anger from the MPs around him. He wanted to have a piece of theatre to do the them and us, and for him to be representing the concerns of normal people. And that, I have to say, I mean, I had lots and lots of calls from friends and family who were horrified at what's happened in the Nowak case, and it kind of fed into. I mean, these are not far-right people; these are just normal people, not even politically engaged people in many cases. They're just sickened by it and saying, "Well, it's fact, isn't it? This is what's going on." And when at least that kind of perception is embedded, then it is very hard to tackle. And it was kind of curious that, without naming him, Farage was linking himself to the Tommy Robinson-inspired protest yesterday and suggesting that there might be more, where one would, maybe too far to say, but almost encouraging it. So...
and I think you're right as well in terms of them and us, and it shows the broader political class has failed after years and years to figure out a way to deal with Farage, to deal with his parties, to deal with this kind of sense of insurgency that they have, and part of it does end up feeding their own narrative, like you say, of creating a them versus us.
Yeah, I mean, there are two more points to be made. This falls in the middle of a Makerfield by-election, which, most of us think could decide whether Andy Burnham's our next Prime Minister or not. And I would imagine that reform activists are now banging on doors saying, remember Henry Nowak. That's what you're voting for if you vote Labour. It would be a rather unfair accusation, but that is the harsh reality of what's going on here, and really very, very significant by-election. And the other thing was that I don't think that Keir Starmer thanking Kenny Badenoch was very helpful to her. You and I have different opinions on it, but I think she struck a reasonably measured tone and quite thoughtful tone on the whole thing, that has been subject to really quite dreadful social media attacks from Reform, really misrepresenting an awful lot of what she said and done in the past. So this kind of, the old uni party, they're all to blame thing was rather fueled by Starmer thanking her across this festival.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting actually how Reform has taken her words, and it shows that even in the middle of a dogfight with Labour in the Makerfield by-election, where the Conservatives are absolutely nowhere, let's be honest about this is absolutely between Reform and Labour, and we shouldn't underestimate. Reform did incredibly well in this constituency at the local elections only a couple of weeks ago. That said, Andy Burnham is very well known and well liked in the area, but it's very tight between these two people. Even at that, Reform is very, very keen to go after the leader of the Conservatives. They clearly see that their wider future is, as John Curtis actually put it in a event I went to this week, the leading pollster and top national treasurer, John Curtis, that their future is eating the Conservatives for breakfast, dinner and lunch.
Yes, indeed. And thinking about the Conservatives and Kemi Badenoch, it was interesting that she really avoided a Nomac subject and went after the other story of the week. Yes,
which was such a gift in some ways to the Conservatives. The revelation that Pat McFadden was complaining behind the scenes, that effectively all Labour MPs keep coming to him and complaining that all they want is to figure out who to tax so that they can spend more money on welfare. And there was an extra sentence after that that said that effectively that the MPs had the wrong priorities. Of course, that has been completely excised from some of what opposition parties have seized on. Some people are suggesting it could be as much of a millstone around Labour's neck as Liam Byrne's infamous 2010 note, "There's no money," which of course didn't say there's no money left. It just said there is no money. But political narratives being what they are, things take on a life. And it it will be fascinating to see how much of a life these Pat McFadden quotes take on.
Well, all the more painful that Pat McFadden's now the welfare secretary, and some suggesting he was hoping he might be chancellor. I think that is whoever ends up as leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, that's probably a no-go now, given the shape. But, the problem is that Pat McFadden is absolutely right, and Kemi Badenoch is playing a slightly longer game today. She sniffs a real weakness in Labour in that they cannot deal with a burgeoning out of control welfare bill. It's in the end, it's some hard decisions are going to have to be made, and one of the reasons that we're all saying Keir Starmer is about to go is that he has been incapable of making those hard decisions, and when he's tried, sticking to them.
Because the other thing that this current Labour government is really struggling to deal with is Labour backbenchers, is his own MPs who keep staging rebellions over things like welfare and forcing the government to back down. And you've got to wonder, actually, if that wouldn't actually be more difficult for Prime Minister Andy Burnham, who will arrive with the support of quite a few Labour MPs if he becomes Prime Minister, but will have to face a series of potentially incredibly difficult decisions to make, which will make many people not very happy.
I think just to wrap up, the issues today actually, whilst they're kind of linked to stories in the short term which are embarrassing and difficult for the government, they're really the kind of wider perspectives of them, of the culture within our public services, and frankly the lack of money, is going to shape whoever is leader in the next couple of years.
And it's not getting better anytime soon.